Good morning, everyone. It's great to have you here, and thanks for giving generously of your time to come and be part of this year's symposium. And a special welcome to our teammates from Air Force and Navy. It's fantastic to have you here too. And to the phenomenal team that are making things happen behind the scenes. Thank you for your contribution this week, and I'm glad you could join us this morning as well. So the RSM, the Army, has already set the scene for you. I would just pick up on a couple of points that she will have made to you, really about purpose and why are you here. Firstly, it's an investment in your experience, and why would I be keen to make an investment in your experience? The answer to that is very simple. That you are our future. You will operate, lead and command the Army in our future. So it's that simple. My job is to build your inheritance, and that's what your senior leaders across the Army are doing every day, to give you the best possible chance to fight and win, and you and your call sign return home to your families and loved ones, should we be required to once again fight for our country's way of life and quality of life. That is what an Army and an Air Force and a Navy, indeed an ADF, exist to do. That is our primary purpose for being. So this week, your experience here is designed to, one, provide you with that experience, build a network of those that are sitting beside you here today, to speak and engage with Army senior leaders and a whole range of other people that we brought together. Because we need, once again, in an era of great power competition, and in an era of great power competition, defence and security once again becomes a national endeavour, a whole of nation endeavour, all aspects of national identity. We're the military element of national power, but there's government, there's those that elected them, the population, our fellow Australians, there's our economy, our industry sector, services, products. There is an education sector, there's an innovation sector, and the list goes on. Whole of nation effort. So my task this morning is to provide you with some context and perspective. So whenever we do tactical planning, we always make an assessment. Once we've got our mission, we always make an assessment of what the operating environment looks like in all its dimensions, and all of the other actors, whether they're threat actors, whether they're friendlies, whether they are other actors in your battle space. And we make an assessment, and then we review our mission, and we might suggest there's some changes that need to be made to our next item. So what I'm going to just share with you this morning is the operating environment for our Army. And hopefully that'll make sense then of the 4 strategic priorities that I've set for our Army, and then talk about how we are executing our mission under the heading of Army's contribution to the National Defence Strategy. The National Defence Strategy is how our government has directed us to prosecute a strategy of denial, deterrence by denial. And what is our part in supporting that whole of nation, whole of government and joint force, integrated force effort. And then toward the back end, I'll focus a little bit in on you and your role and the primary purpose of any of us, from Lance Corporal to Lieutenant General, in terms of leadership. So that's what I'm going to step through, and then I think we'll have some opportunity for discussion or if there's any particular questions you may have of me. So let's start with what the operating environment looks like from an Army perspective in the middle decades of the 21st century. I describe in 5 points what that environment looks like. I call it the prevailing winds. You might call them the currents of the day. They're the things you're not always aware of. Often they're blowing or pulling you in different directions. You may not be always, they may not always be front of mind, but they are there shaping the environment that you need to operate in, that we need to operate in. Right. The first of them is what I describe as the long shadow of Afghanistan. What do I mean by that? Well, the army that I joined was the post-Vietnam era army. The army that Australians are joining today is a post-Afghanistan era. Why is that important? Why do we need to be conscious of it? Well, it's quite simple. We learn a lot of lessons and we are subject of a lot of experience in any war or any operation, and indeed in the training that we design and execute, which is meant to be as realistic as we can make it. And it's important as military professionals that we make judgments about those lessons. Where is a lesson we've learned going to make us better today, where it's relevant and applicable? And conversely, which lessons are best consigned to history because they're not relevant today, because it's a different set of challenges, a different environment, or a different fight. Every war characterises in a different way. So while we seek to learn from history, from our own recent history, and from the wars that are being prosecuted today, they are not a predictor of what is going to happen tomorrow. And that's where the tension between wars enduring human nature, the things that haven't changed for anywhere between 2,500 and 6,000 years, things we can be sure of, the human nature of it, and the ever-changing character, which is generally speaking an and not or proposition. That is, we accrete and add generally new technologies, but generally speaking don't replace things. They are additive to. We see that playing out around us today. So the wars in Iraq and Afghanistan in particular were attracted the title wars of choice. In other words, they weren't existential for us. They didn't really touch Australia or Australians. But nonetheless, our government and our country made a decision. They made a choice, and that choice was to commit. And every war has consequences. It's like the rings in a tree. It leaves a mark on our nation, and it certainly leaves a mark on those that participated in it and their families across a whole range of areas. From the fact that we sacrificed 41 soldiers' lives and impacted 41 families' lives, through to all of the other impacts. That is historically right on target in terms of the impacts of war. But because they were considered so-called wars of choice, those impacts have largely been confined to the military element of national power. So that's the first prevailing wind, the long shadow of Afghanistan. Some of you, no doubt, looking around the room, served in that war. Others may not have. The point is we cannot afford to, one, be complacent, or two, to approach the future with the hubris of thinking we know how this is going to go and we know what we need to do based on our previous experience, because we will be wrong. And the stakes are way too high. The stakes are the lives, the health and the well-being of our people, and a high probability of failing in our mission. So that's the first one. The second one is the Defence Strategic Review, which was conducted by the previous government in 2022, when they came to power in May. It made a range of recommendations which the government broadly agrees with and then reflected in the National Defence Strategy. I can see, I saw earlier, some of you have got a copy of Army's contribution to the National Defence Strategy. If you haven't read it, read it. That encapsulates in one very consumable document largely what I'm talking to you about today. So what is our contribution to our teammates in Navy and Air Force, space and cyber domains in order to get the ADF's mission done? We don't, as an Army, we don't have our own strategy. We contribute to a collective strategy. That Defence Strategic Review basically said the ADF's not fit for purpose and it needs to change in these ways. In the Army, it confirmed that the thinking and the planning we were doing coming out of Afghanistan and Iraq and looking at the changes in our operating environment, what our new mission set would be and how we would need to change in order to meet those demands and requirements. And I'll talk a little bit about that in detail, what our approach has been. But the mission I was assigned was to optimise the Army for the tour manoeuvre and long-range strike. That it was the headline, and that's exactly what we have been doing. At the ADF level, it directed us to move from being a joint force to an integrated force, and from a balanced force to a focused force. We have discussion about what that actually means in the Q&A. The third prevailing wind or current was the Royal Commission into Defence and Veteran Suicide. That concluded last year. And I'll quote Commissioner Nick Caldis, who was the lead commissioner. He said on a number of occasions publicly, for the majority of people who wear our nation's uniforms, their service is a positive thing, personally and professionally. That's a really good thing. We need to understand why that is and seek to expand it. But let's put that aside because that's not what the Royal Commission was about. The Royal Commission was about those for whom, albeit in the minority, their experience has been a negative one. It's had pernicious effects on their lives, either lifelong, in some cases life-altering, and in the worst cases, life-ending. And they are our people. They wear our uniform, and we're an organisation. We're an Army and an ADF that aspires and purports to put its people first and to work as a team. Teams bring everyone along, focused around our common purpose. So the Royal Commission was a once-in-a-generation opportunity to be a better ADF, be a better Army in our case. And we've moved out on that over the last couple of years. We won't fix it overnight, and suicidality and suicide are multifactorial phenomena. In other words, there's a lot of correlation but it's very hard to put your finger and say exactly that there's causation. So how do we build a system where we're doing everything we can to reduce the causes or support people through all of the things that life throws at them outside of their military service, and ensure that we meaningfully reduce the incidence of suicidality and suicide in our army. And a little bit more on that in terms of how we're approaching it in a moment. The fourth of the prevailing winds I'll describe as a new age of austerity. What does that mean? It simply means that we shouldn't bank on any more resources in the short term. And that most particularly applies to our army. In terms of domain priorities, we are number 5 of 5. That's okay so long as we get what we need to field a minimum viable capability in an environment where effectiveness needs to triumph over efficiency. Doesn't mean we put efficiency aside. The whole purpose of being able to be focused on combat effectiveness where resources are tight is to use the ingenuity, the innovation of our people. And historically, it's not the first time we've been here, and nor will it be the last. But we need to be very, very conscious of it and conscious of how we use the resources that we do have. Perhaps more conscious than we've needed to be in the past. And the fifth and final prevailing wind is what I'll describe as interwar thinking. Interwar thinking has a 6 millennia recorded history. It's a predictable sine wave pattern of human thinking in response to the last war over those 6,000 years. It is evident in our own national history since Federation in 1901. In every interwar period, we have demobilised, we have sought as a nation to deliver on a peace dividend. But interwar thinking is broader than that and deeper than that, because it presupposes that we've learned as a race, as a species, as humans from the last war, and we would never repeat those mistakes again because the costs and the consequences are so terrible. I think that's optimistic at best, but dangerous if that's the mindset that prevails. Because there's nothing in the history of humankind that would give us any confidence that that was a sound way of approaching the future. So interwar thinking proposes that the next war will be short, it will be decisive, it will be fought at ever-increasing distance, it will be fought everywhere except for among people in population centres on the land. That's dangerous thinking. The reason it's dangerous thinking is because we know from history and that pattern that's happened over thousands of years since 1901 in our own country. Because it brings with it risk, and the risk is realised in the opening days and weeks and months and years, in some cases, of the next war. The stakes are high. There are 81,746 soldiers' names on the Roll of Honour at the War Memorial. I was there last week to add another 23. So they're the consequences, they're the stakes, and that's why it's not just an intellectual and historically interesting exercise. It's our job as leaders to make sure that we understand both the nature and the character of warfare the immutable human nature of warfare, what's inevitably going to be required, and its ever-changing character, and how we continue to transform. So that's why the way we think about, and our job as military professionals is to make judgments about how we balance between enduring human nature and ever-changing character, dominated by technology of the day. And your generation is unique in one way, and one way only. That is the scale and the tempo of technological change that has characterised your lives so far and is increasing exponentially. That is a challenge that no other generation has had to face at the same scale and pace of technological development as you do. Every generation's had its own kind of unique challenges. At the end of the day, none of us are particularly unique. The nature of the challenges is similar. All right, so that hopefully very, very quickly gives you a bit of a sketch of what is the operating environment at an army level, where I'm looking at what I'm accountable for, and scanning the environment, doing the analysis, and trying to understand what are the things that push us and pull us in different ways and create the environment that our army as an institution, national institution, as a profession, and as a fighting force need to exist within. That then informed the 4 strategic priorities that I set for our army. Now, strategic priorities are exactly that. They're institutional level priorities that will manifest in different ways and differently depending on where you sit in the organisation. What your call sign's role is, what its recent history has been, where it needs to get to, what your current challenges are. So they're thematic, but I think pretty recognisable, and I've laid them out in that Army's contribution to the National Defence Strategy as well. 4 of them, the one at the centre is trust. That's trust in the team that you lead today, trust in your chain of command, in your call sign, so trust in our teams. It's trust of the society we serve, the communities that each of us live in, and our fellow Australians writ large. And that's one of the big focus areas of why we are here this week, the Army and society. Trust of the government of the day, ultimately that's who we work for, and trust of our allies and partners. Because we are doing more with more allies and partners every day than we have certainly in the time that I can remember. So without trust, nothing can really happen of any substance. Very difficult to prosecute successful combat operations without trust in all of those dimensions. Trust is easily lost. You lose it in an instant, and it takes a long time to rebuild it. We are focused as an army on building and maintaining trust, and we're focused as leaders on building and maintaining trust in whatever our call sign or group, whichever part of the organisation we do. The second is readiness. That's our ability to fight tonight in the first instance. Your call sign is assigned a mission tonight. What is it you can achieve? And what is it you do today that you aren't going to do or weren't going to do that if you knew that mission was going to be required of you tomorrow? The second part of readiness is being ready for tomorrow, and that relates to the transformation that we are rapidly undertaking. I'll talk a little bit more about that in a moment. So readiness speaks to our purpose Our reason for being, to fight and win. The third is to be good stewards of the resources that we are entrusted with, noting that those resources represent the collective contribution of the nation and the community we serve. In other words, taxpayers' dollars, which brings with it a whole range of other accountabilities and responsibilities in terms of how we use the resources that we assign. Now, I can't think of one occasion in nearly 40 years where I've had everything I thought I needed, would like to have had, or indeed needed, actually needed. Not one. Not one operation, not one training serial. Whether it was time, ammunition, people, major systems, information. That is the nature of what we do. It's being able to operate confidently in an ambiguous environment and figure out how we're going to get a mission done with what we have, and importantly, as leaders, understand what level of risk we are dealing with, and have that mature discussion with our chain of command and say, hey, this is an unacceptable level of risk. How can you help me? How can I help you? At the end of the day, the standard is, and I'm quoting from the 26th President of the United States, President Roosevelt, who said, do what you can with what you have wherever you find yourself. That is the standard in our army. It is a waste of time and energy to think, oh, if we had this, if we had that, when we get this, when we get this. Just push that aside, focus on what you have. What's your mission? What's the operating environment? Who's your enemy? Who are the other actors in your space? How can you get it done with what you've got? Understand what level of risk you have. And the fourth and final strategic priority is telling our story. That's about communicating. We have a fantastic story to tell. Historically, we're part of our nation's history. We're a national institution. We're a profession, and we're a fighting force. Each of you in the service that you render for our nation today, as you represent your service or your call sign, have a fantastic story to tell. And you are encouraged and empowered to tell it in your community or wherever you are. Talk about what you do, how you do it, and your part in the mission. Because you're the expert on that. And you're the best storytellers we have. Because you have the trust of those that you are engaging with. Because you're credible. And because you are not distant from the community that we serve. Each of you come from, those in army uniforms, from one of the 157 locations that our army is situated in, from the Torres Strait of Tasmania, from Derby, up in the northwest, in the Kimberley, through to Holsworthy in the southwest, and all points in between. So we have a huge interaction, a huge opportunity to ensure that our fellow Australians understand us, what we do, how we do it. I could not be more proud of what you're doing every day and the way you do it. I want the rest of our country to understand that in a more practical, focused and contemporary way. So that's a job for every single one of us, about 43,000 of us that wear our Army's uniform. So there are 4 strategic priorities in the context of a strategic operating environment. That's the context within which our Army is situated. And then you can place yourself within that. And I'll talk now about Army's contribution to the National Defence Strategy. 6 points. They all start with C. So a bit of alliteration for you on Monday morning. The first is the big idea, the central idea is continual adaptation. Why? Because war has always been a contest to see which opponent can adapt the fastest. You can see that happen in the wars in the European and Middle Eastern theatres today. Always been thus. So that's the idea. So how do we rewire our army in all aspects? Because it's just not good enough to say, oh, the big idea is continual adaptation. Let's adapt. It's got to be rewired and hardwired into the way we think, the way we talk, the way we act, our systems, our processes, and our approaches. The second C is about a comprehensive approach. In other words, infusing every aspect of our army. And what I'll do now, with the remaining 4 Cs, is just talk in generic terms about our approach to that rewiring. The first is concepts. Concepts, warfighting concepts, describe how we fight. They're the lead trace in pulling along the way we organise around and approach the way we need to fight. So we have reimagined, reanalysed and rewritten our key concepts. We're about to deliver on the littoral warfare concept. We've rewritten the land domain concept and the land domain operating concept, which matches force structures to how we're going to fight and in the context of the Chief of Joint Operations theatre missions 1, 2 and 3. We have spent a lot of time and effort on the integrating concept because we've been directed as an ADF to become an integrated force. How do you do that? Well, you need to figure out how we're going to fight as an integrated force. So the 4 we've really focused in on are integrated air and missile defence, multi-domain strike, logistics and special operations. So all of those integrating concepts have been rewritten. We've either been the leader author of them on behalf of the rest of the force, or we've contributed where others, for example, IAMD has been Air Force lead. So concepts, the first of those 4 Cs, we've defined how we need to fight, given the ever-changing character of war. The second is C2, command and control. In other words, the way that we operate, the way that we transmit, understand and execute on the mission and the plan. C2 includes the way we organise. So we have raised the unit of action from the brigade to the division, and we're now fielding war-fighting divisions against the theatre missions. Because large-scale combat operations in a coalition environment are what is demanded. One, because we're in an era of great power competition and the scale is much expanded. And 2, because of the demands of our operating environment. The tyranny of distance and the challenges that brings across the Indo-Pacific. The Indo-Pacific is an easy thing to say, but when you actually look at what it encompasses on a map of the Earth, it's 51% of the Earth's surface. It's mostly the Earth's population. It's the largest archipelagos of islands, separated by some significant bodies of blue water ocean. So it's a really challenging and very, very diverse operating environment that we're talking about. So we've lifted the unit of action back to the division. We have changed the way that all of our headquarters, mine included, are structured. So we're vertically aligned on a NATO staff system. That's the G and S system, 1 through. We have added some functions into my headquarters so it can do its job during the war. G2 function, G6 function. We've expanded our G3 function, operations, and built a joint land component in headquarters joint operations. So I now am accountable for two joint components, the land component and the special operations component in Joint Operations Command that sit alongside the maritime, air, space and cyber component commands. So when we talk about rewiring how we're going to execute those concepts against the theatre missions, you can see the connective tissue there. In order to live within our means, I have had to take a brigade and a half of combat power off our orbit. So we've closed some brigades down and some units. We have re-rolled others. That's cognizant of the new age of austerity and to make sure we can reduce the level of hollowness and ensure we can live within the resources we've been allocated. So that's had an impact on some of the org changes you will have seen. We have sought to stitch together the physical and organisational mechanisms that help us to adapt, to continually adapt. First Armoured Regiment has been re-rolled as a tech scale battle group or an innovation experimentation battle group. They had their first live in the box hit out on Talisman Sabre this year. The idea is to keep pace with the ever-changing character of warfare. So we team them with industry, academics, soldiers, and figure out how they're going to use or what technology is actually going to be useful in our mission set, in our part of the world, and how we would use it. And conversely, and just as valuably, which are not. It's everything from digital, software-defined technology through to hardware and effectiveness, missiles or other ammunition. Our Combat Training Centre and its ability in Forces Command to link the live theatre with what we're learning today and inject that into the way we design training, advanced collective training at the Combat Training Centre. We flipped the approach of the Combat Training Centre, where as a commander, you would take your call sign there to be trained. The CTC provides the environment and commanders take their call signs and train their call signs. There's a companion effort that the RSM and others in Forces Command are leading to look at how do we ensure that we are teaching our junior leaders, NCOs and officers how to train, how to design, develop and deliver training that's relevant to mission and operating environment. We've done a range of other things, but I think you kind of get the picture when it comes to organisation. We've turned our army upside down very quickly, reorganised, reorientated. Third of those, the four ways in which we're rewiring is capability. I'm accountable for 8 capability programs in the One Defence Capability System. Just going to talk about probably 5 or 6 of them because they're the ones that are aligned with the transformation that's directed under the First is littoral manoeuvre. We'll commission over the next decade about 28 ships of medium landing craft. 26 ships, I should say. 18 and 8 heavies. The heavies are around about the same displacement as a small frigate and have a very, very large carrying capacity. We are doing that in conjunction with our Navy, and we have been working on that for about the last half dozen years at least. The first of the mediums is due to be in the water on the last quarter of next year or first quarter of the year after. Our first 6 skippers finished their Maritime Warfare Officers course. We've their Navy teammates and are getting experience at sea on Navy vessels and others as we speak. We spent some time with some of our water operators, watercraft operators out of NFSB. The skills that they have could not be more relevant in terms of operating in the future. Long range strike, 10th Brigade, Fires Brigade, it's actually a multi-domain task force, didn't exist just a couple of years ago. By the end of this year, we'll have a fully built NASAMS battalion, an almost fully built HIMARS battalion. It has the ability to plug into the joint head, and we're working on the effectors that it needs. It's already had a few really important hit-outs with the 3rd Multi-Domain Task Force out of the United States Army Pacific earlier this year, and that all went very, very well. We are digitally, procedurally and humanly interoperable and indeed interchangeable. Yeah. Functionally, it's about sense, make sense, strike and shield simultaneously, and sustain. And so each of those force elements are about building out those functions in combat. The headline event at Talisman Sabre or 10 Brigade was the firing of the Precision Strike Missile, which is a co-development program with the United States of America that we've been in for about the last 5 years. Fired the first of our own missiles from the first of our own HIMARS. It was done by a bombardier and 2 guns. They knocked it out of the park. So the message there is, with all of these great plans, they come to nothing if they're not executed at the tactical level. And that's your job. Combined Arms Fighting System, recapitalisation, smaller than what we had planned, but it is incredibly capable. That's vested in the 3rd Brigade. The first time in our history, we have under armour breach and bridging for our sappers. The world's best tank in a SEP V3, first 40 of which have been delivered. The infantry fighting vehicle is on its way, as is the self-propelled howitzer for 4-reach. We'll have Apache delivered next month, first of the Apaches. Our people have been training, our maintainers, our air crews have been training on that the last couple of years in the United States and the United Kingdom. That is a very, very capable armour brigade, and far more capable than probably any other armour brigade on the planet. The 4th capability program is the Land Sea 4 program. That's how we stitch together communication digitally. Any of you that are operating out in combat units today will be intensely frustrated, I suspect, with your current C4 system. It's an interim. It is not what we need, and the Land Sea 4 program is designed to deliver that. We'll take that to the government next month on the 22nd to get the money, the $701 million that are required to ensure we have a fit-for-purpose Land Sea 4 system. So they're the 4 key capability priorities. We've already modernised or in stride modernising our battlefield aviation program. We have the first 15 of 40 Black Hawks. We have Apache arriving from next month, and we've increased our Chinook fleet by 40%. And we've already, as a lead trace, transformed our special operations capability along functional lines focused on the Indo-Pacific, strategic reconnaissance, strategic strike, special warfare, and technical enablement. So those are probably, the priority, or the ones that get most of the attention out of the 8 programs. There's plenty more happening as well with mobility, counter mobility, and our soldier combat system programs as well. The fourth and final C, and going back to my point about being comprehensive in how we transform our army, is our culture. Now, culture is often a term that is hard to pin down, a bit fuzzy, a bit fluffy. We talk about it a lot, but it doesn't actually lead to much in terms of concrete action. Culture in our army is an applied endeavour, and I've defined it in that document, Army's contribution to the National Defence Strategy. It is quite simply how well we as individuals and as a collective, whether it's your call sign or our army, live, that is, demonstrate our values in how we think, what we say, and what we do, and the alignment between those 3 things every day in our call sign with those who we interact with, whether they're our teammates in the army, in the joint force, in the community, with our elected representatives, or with allies and partners. That comes back to that central priority of trust. So living our values, and it's measurable at an individual level, at a team level, and at an army level. So it's about holding ourselves to account and making our culture, the Army's culture, your call signs climate, consistent with our objective to fight and win, and our obligation to be good leaders and to take care of our people. So culture really matters, but it's got to be real, it's got to be tangible, and it's got to be applied, and it's got to be measurable. At an individual level, I'd encourage all of us just to go through a very short personal AAR and preparation session every day. So get up in the morning, you think about what you've got to do. How am I today, with everything that's on my schedule, all the interactions, all the people I'm going to interact with, how am I going to consciously, or how will you consciously see service, courage, respect, integrity, and professional excellence in what I say and what I do, and is there congruence between the two today? And every soldier, sailor, or aviator that you are accountable for today in your call sign is watching you and judging you just as you are doing of me right now. That's what culture means. And then at the end of the day, a quick personal AAR. How did I go? We're all human. We're all very flawed human beings. That's the nature of being. And so we fail every day. That's going to happen. We need to accept it. But what isn't acceptable is if we don't learn from those failures and we don't apply what we've learned to be better tomorrow. So that's what I mean by culture. The other 2 key aspects of our culture are our response to the Royal Commission for Defence of Veteran Suicide. 4 quick points that describe how we're doing it. The first is we are aligning it with our core reasons for being, to be able to fight and win. If it is not aligned with our core reason for being, our number 1 priority, then it will just atrophy over time. and it won't achieve what it needs to achieve. The approach in 3 tiers is very simple. Number 1, at the individual level, build resilience. Mental, physical, spiritual resilience. By spiritual, I'm not talking about religious, but it can include religious. We all have a spiritual dimension to our lives. Build resilience. Because the same resilience you need in combat is the same resilience you need to deal with whatever life throws at you, is the same resilience we each need when the scaffold of service falls away, as it invariably does for every single one of us at some stage. The second tier is about cohesive teams. That's a focus on leadership, on you, on me, cohesive teams. It's about setting our junior leaders in particular up for success. So you can, 1, realise your potential, 2, realise your obligation to those that you are privileged to lead, to those that we are privileged to lead. And the third tier is about aligning the organisation's policies and the way it applies those policies, its practice, so that there isn't a say-do gap between what I'm saying and then the way that policy is reflected and then applied. And we've got some work to do there. Now, I don't own any of those policies. I've got to influence and shape them and make the case. And I do that in conjunction with and alongside my teammates, Chief of Navy and the Chief of Air Force. Because it's from the 3 services where all of the uniformed people, wherever they are in our organisation, come from. So we're all aligned, but we're also respectful of the differences of the environments we operate in, and therefore the differences in the way that our 3 services operate. It's not good, bad, right, wrong, better, worse. It's just different. It's actually, that's the definition of diversity. We all bring something different from our different operating environments to ensure that collectively we can achieve our mission. Fine. Right. The third final point I'll make under the heading of culture is some work that I commissioned last year on the state of the Army profession. Might sound a bit esoteric, but it's absolutely necessary because it's one of our 3 dimensions: a national institution, a profession, and a fighting force. And in that strategic environment, I need to make sure I fulfil my obligations to each of those 3 dimensions. So it looks at, the model we've chosen looks at our jurisdiction. In other words, what is it that we provide for the society we serve that it can't provide for itself? The answer to that is defence and security. For us, defence and security in the land environment. Second is our professional body of knowledge. Right, that's everything from education through training and the experience that we invest in our people. We're responsible for that body of knowledge. So making sure we are actively looking at the opportunities we're providing and what is in their content also. Everything from the NCO training continuum through to the undergraduate degree here that our officer cadets are studying. And our professional military education that we do jointly and that we need to do in addition to. A good example is the professional study guide that we just published, which is about things for us to read as professionals, to learn from the experience and the history of others, to look at a whole range of different perspectives, contest of ideas, and help us to make those judgments as military professionals about how we're going to balance today with our mission set and our resources that balance between war's enduring nature and its ever-changing character. And the third pillar is about command accountability. Each of us have accountabilities. If you're in a command position, how do we make sure that we are accountable for those? And the focus really here is at my level and at the level of the Army's generals. We've got quite a lot of experience when it comes to the levels below that. So I want to talk about culture and a comprehensive approach to transforming the Army. They're the three key points. So the big idea, continual adaptation. That's how you win wars. Be the first to adapt successfully. Doing it comprehensively. The way we fight, reflected in our concepts, rewritten. The way we're organised and we do command and control, changed incredibly. Our capability programs delivering quickly, on time, on target, on budget. And our call signs are ready to receive them. And our culture, the bit that glues it all together, but something we understand and practice in real terms. It's applied, it's tangible, it's not a fluffy conversation. Great to understand the theory, that's where you have those conversations, but it's got to result in practical application that results in better outcomes for our mission and for our people. Right, switch targets now, draw a line under that. Couple of points about leadership. They're universal, in my view, regardless of what level you're leading at. And you don't necessarily need to be in a designated command position to lead, because if you understand our leadership model, the fundamental and foundational level is lead yourself and then lead others. What I would offer to you is there is one way and one way only to lead, and that's by personal example. Coming back to my point about how do we live our values on a day-to-day basis. What really counts in leadership is the effect of your leadership on those that we are privileged to lead. It's a mutual relationship, it's a reciprocal relationship, and it's pointless if it's not done with the outcomes of our mission and the well-being of our people first and foremost in our minds. So by personal example. There needs to be a congruence between what we say and what we do. That is easily picked up if there isn't. When that gap becomes apparent. And then I think there are three key character or aspects of character that are really important. The first is competence. That is reflective of one of our values, professional excellence. If you're going to lead, you need to be competent, actually, and competent in the eyes of those that we are privileged. So that's professional excellence. Being the best you can be at your job, your ECN, your mustering, your trade, as a professional, and being able to lead a group to achieve those outcomes. Because most of the jobs and the teams you're in deliver a specific outcome and contribute to a specific function in common. The other two are, one, humility. Humility is founded fundamentally in respect. Respect for others, which we've talked about. Respect for the operating environment. And respect for our enemies and adversaries. It starts at home with the humility to think that maybe we don't have all the answers, and maybe everything that we think and hold true is entirely right or entirely shared by others. So it's about listening to others' perspectives in order to ensure that our own, in this case, are actually founded in reality and fact. And the final point is around empathy. Now, empathy is not sympathy. Empathy is the ability to put yourself in somebody else's shoes, their experience or their perspective, and at least try and understand it. Because in doing so, you might get a better understanding of why they're doing what they're doing, why they say what they say, why they believe what they believe. You may never agree with it, and that's fine, but we've got to understand it because you've got to engage with it. And to do so in a way that is beneficial for our own people and our own mission is what we're aiming to do. And by the way, we might just learn something as well, because none of us has a mortgage on what's right in every case. Right. I'm getting the hook because I've been talking for way too long. But I hope you've taken from what I've offered to you this morning the broader context in which our Army sits today, why that matters to you as you lead us into the future, and how significant, how weighty the responsibilities that leaders carry are in these middle decades of the 21st century. That's designed to provide you with the context and an understanding of the environment that you each operate in, even though some or all of those aspects may not be immediately apparent or immediately impacting your day-to-day life. I guarantee that some or most of them are in some way, shape or form, but it may not be immediately apparent. But it's your future and you need to understand what's shaping it. Because that's part of what I can do to set you up for success, but two, you need to understand it so that you can be right more times than you are wrong when it comes to the decisions, the balance, the understanding and application of risk that you've got to do on a day-to-day basis today, wherever it is you serve, but importantly, tomorrow, as your responsibilities and obligations to lead and to contribute to our mission and looking after our people expand exponentially. Because with that progression and expansion in responsibility comes power. And I'll leave you with this point. Take yourself back to when you were a recruit and think of your corporal section commander. Most of you here are corporals. That corporal influenced your life on a day-to-day basis. Some of them would have been really good and inspired you. Some of them perhaps quite the opposite. But my point is, with the rank, regardless of what it is, comes expectation from those that you're privileged to lead, but also comes power. Because the influence that we each have on those that we are privileged to lead is something we need to be really conscious of. Because if power is used without deliberation and without consciousness, it can do a lot of harm. So we get around to junior NCOs and junior officers, I'm just I'm just captain. Well, I'm just lieutenant general. There's no just up, because regardless of whether you're a lance corporal or lieutenant general, you've got obligations to our people, to our mission, and they have obligations on us, and they have expectations of us. So how we use that power really, really matters in terms of the impact it has on our people, and ultimately the quality and the effectiveness of our leadership. And it is a privilege to lead our fellow Australians. Rank is about getting a mission done. It's not a reflection of our relative worth or superiority in any way, shape, or form. So I'd ask you please to consider how you use the power that you have in a way that is conscious, deliberate, seeks to achieve the mission, and take care of your team. Right. Because I've spoken for so long, we're out of time for questions, but we will have the opportunity over the next 3 days to rub shoulders. So if there's something you want to come and talk about, then the first opportunity will be this evening at the icebreaker function. So I look forward to having a chat to those of you that want to come and say hi or talk about something in particular out there. But thank you very much for being here and being part of this week. It's your Army, it's your ADF, and it's your future. What we're trying to achieve this week is to build the inheritance. Because I won't be here this time next year, but you will be. And it will be your Army, your Navy, and your Air Force, and importantly, your joint team. So thanks very much, team. I look forward to catching up again this evening and throughout the course of the week. Thanks for your time.